Marcus Bellamy stood at his living room window at 6:32 a.m., coffee mug frozen halfway to his lips, watching Patricia Hendricks, HOA president and self-appointed neighborhood dictator, hammer a bright yellow, private HOA property signed directly into the wooden post of his grandfather's bridge. His bridge, the one that had crossed Willow Creek on his family's land since 1947. 3 months of her escalating claims that the bridge belonged to the HOA. 3 months of certified letters demanding he pay maintenance fees for his own property. 3 months of her telling neighbors he was stealing HOA resources. But this morning was different. This morning, Patricia had just committed vandalism on camera. And what this retired civil engineer didn't know was that Marcus had spent those 3 months pulling every property survey, water rights document, and title record from the county archives. He'd found something beautiful. Something that would end Patricia's reign of entitlement permanently. Before we dive into how Marcus dismantled an HOA president's delusions with 19th century property law, if you love stories where entitled people learn expensive lessons about assumptions, hit that like button and subscribe. Trust me, you'll want to see how this unfolds. This is a story in 3 parts. The violation that pushed a property owner to his breaking point, the confrontation where decades of land records destroyed someone's authority, and the resolution where one woman learned that claiming other people's property has consequences that last generations. For 3 months, Marcus endured something that would drive any homeowner to madness, watching someone claim ownership of property that had been in his family for 78 years. Patricia Hendricks didn't just make suggestions or requests. She issued demands, sent threatening letters, and told anyone who would listen that Marcus was the problem. Every reasonable attempt to correct her failed. Every conversation ended with her smug insistence that she knew better. The breaking point came when she crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed, forcing Marcus to stop being nice and start being thorough. The confrontation wasn't just a conversation. It was the systematic destruction of someone's perceived authority using the one weapon Patricia never expected: actual facts. Marcus had spent weeks researching, and when he finally revealed what he discovered, the power dynamic in the entire neighborhood shifted in real time. Patricia's demands turned to deflections. Her confidence crumbled, and the ultimatum Marcus delivered left her with 2 choices, neither of them good. The resolution brought consequences that rippled far beyond one bridge and one entitled HOA president. What Marcus set in motion exposed a pattern of overreach that had affected multiple homeowners. The punishment fit the crime perfectly, and the twist that emerged halfway through created a reckoning nobody saw coming. By the time the dust settled, Patricia learned that some battles aren't worth fighting, and Marcus reclaimed something more valuable than just his bridge. Here's exactly how it happened. Marcus Bellamy, 52, had returned to his childhood home in Riverside Meadows 2 years earlier after his grandfather passed away. The house itself wasn't remarkable, a modest 3-bedroom ranch built in 1955, but the property was special. 5 acres that stretched from Oakwood Drive down to Willow Creek, including a beautiful covered footbridge his grandfather had built by hand in 1947. Marcus, who'd spent 30 years as a civil engineer for the State Highway Department, had always loved that bridge. As a kid, he'd spent summer afternoons fishing from its planks. Now, as the property's owner, he maintained it carefully, replacing boards when needed, keeping the structure sound. He worked from home as a consulting engineer, which meant he was present most days, watching the creek flow past, grateful for the peace his grandfather's property provided. The first incident happened on a Tuesday morning in late June. Marcus was reviewing structural plans on his laptop when he noticed Patricia Hendricks walking across his bridge with a clipboard. He knew Patricia. Everyone in the HOA-governed section of the neighborhood knew Patricia. She'd been HOA president for 6 years and had a reputation for interpreting every rule in the strictest possible way. Marcus owned one of the 3 grandfathered properties that predated the HOA and weren't subject to its rules, but his driveway connected to HOA streets, so he'd had minimal interactions with her. He walked down to the bridge, curious, and found her taking measurements. When he asked what she was doing, Patricia smiled that tight smile of hers and explained that the HOA was conducting an audit of shared community resources. Marcus politely corrected her, explaining that the bridge was on his private property and had been since before the neighborhood existed. Patricia's smile never wavered. She said they'd look into it and left. Marcus assumed that would be the end of it. 4 weeks later, he received a certified letter. The envelope contained a 3-page document on official HOA letterhead demanding that he pay $250 in deferred maintenance fees for the bridge. The letter claimed that because the bridge crossed Willow Creek, which ran through multiple properties, it constituted shared water access infrastructure and therefore fell under HOA jurisdiction. Marcus read the letter twice, certain it was a joke. It wasn't. The letter cited 3 different HOA bylaws, none of which actually applied to his property, and gave him 30 days to pay or face further action. He called Patricia immediately. The conversation lasted less than 3 minutes. Patricia insisted she'd consulted with the HOA attorney, and the bridge was definitely community property. When Marcus tried to explain that his property deed explicitly included the creek bed and both banks, Patricia cut him off with a condescending lecture about how feelings don't override legal reality. She hung up before he could respond. The third incident happened 6 weeks after that. Marcus came home from a meeting to find Patricia standing on his bridge with 2 HOA board members, pointing at various structural elements while the others took notes. This time, he wasn't polite. He informed them they were trespassing on private property and needed to leave immediately. Patricia's response made his blood pressure spike. She announced that the HOA had voted to assume responsibility for the bridge's maintenance and would be sending a contractor to make necessary repairs within the month. When Marcus demanded to know what gave them that authority, Patricia pulled out a surveyor's map, not a real survey, just a printout from Google Earth, and pointed to where the creek formed the property line between his land and the HOA common area across the water. "The bridge connects both sides," she declared. "That makes it shared property. Now you can either pay your portion of the maintenance costs or we'll place a lien on your property for the full amount." The other board members looked uncomfortable, but neither contradicted her. Marcus stood there in stunned silence as they walked away, Patricia's voice drifting back as she told the others about some people who think they're above community rules. He tried one more time to reason with her. He brought his actual property deed to the next HOA meeting. The one that clearly showed his lot included all land between survey markers PB1 and PB7, extending to the center line of Willow Creek, including all structures thereon. Patricia barely glanced at it. She insisted her research showed differently and suggested Marcus was trying to confuse the issue with old paperwork. When he pointed out that the deed was recorded with the county and superseded any HOA claims, Patricia smiled that infuriating smile and said the board would take it under advisement. Then she moved on to discussing someone's unapproved mailbox color. That night, Marcus made a decision. He'd spent his career building things properly, following codes, respecting property lines. He believed in order and rules, but he also believed in facts, and the fact was that Patricia Hendricks had moved from mistaken to malicious. She wasn't confused about property law. She was deliberately ignoring it because she enjoyed exerting control. Fine. If Patricia wanted to play property rights games, Marcus would show her what actual property research looked like. He took the next 2 weeks off work and drove to the county recorder's office. He pulled every document related to his land dating back to the original land grant. He researched water rights, riparian law, and HOA limitations. He found the original survey maps from 1947. And then he found something extraordinary: title records showing that his grandfather hadn't just built the bridge on his own land. He'd formally titled each post and support beam with the county as permanent fixtures on surveyed property. On August 23rd, Marcus was ready, and on August 24th, Patricia Hendricks hammered her sign into his bridge. Marcus didn't rush outside when he saw Patricia with her hammer. Instead, he picked up his phone, opened the camera app, and calmly filmed her vandalizing his property. She spent 4 minutes positioning the sign perfectly, stepping back to admire her work, then pulling out her own phone to take pictures, probably for the HOA newsletter. When she finally turned to leave, Marcus was standing at the end of the bridge, blocking her path. Patricia's expression shifted from surprise to irritation. "I'm installing proper signage," she announced. This bridge is being transferred to HOA management, so homeowners need to know the rules. Marcus didn't raise his voice. He simply said, "Patricia, you just committed criminal vandalism on private property. I have it on video. You're going to remove that sign, and then we're going to have a conversation about property law." Patricia's laugh was sharp and dismissive. She tried to step around him, but Marcus didn't move. "I'm serious," he continued, his engineer's precision coming through in every word. "You've made claims about this bridge for 3 months, you've sent demands, you've trespassed multiple times, and now you've damaged my property. So we're done with assumptions, we're going to deal with facts." Patricia's face flushed. She started to launch into one of her lectures, but Marcus pulled a folder from under his arm. "I know you didn't bother to do actual research, Patricia, so I did it for you. Let's start with something simple. Do you know what riparian rights means?" The condescension in Patricia's response was thick. Of course she knew. It meant property owners along waterways had shared access. Marcus nodded. "Close. It means the property owner whose deed includes the waterway has primary rights to that water and everything in it. Now, do you know whose deed includes Willow Creek?" He opened the folder and pulled out a surveyed map from 1889, when the land was originally parceled. His finger traced a red line. "This is parcel 47, granted to Edmund Bellamy in 1889. Note the description, including the full bed and banks of Willow Creek from the northern boundary to the southern boundary, extending to a depth of 12 feet below the creek bed." "That's not just surface water, Patricia. My family owns the actual riverbed." Patricia's expression shifted from confident to uncertain. That's old. Property laws have changed since." Marcus interrupted her by pulling out another document. "Current deed recorded in 2023 when I inherited the property. Same language, nothing's changed. My property extends 12 feet below the creek bed, which means every single support post of this bridge, and there are 6 of them, sits on land I own, not shared land, not HOA land, mine." He pulled out another page. "But let's go further. In 1947, when my grandfather built this bridge, he didn't just build it, he titled it. Do you know what that means, Patricia?" She didn't answer. Marcus continued, his voice level but relentless. "It means he went to the county recorder and filed formal title documents for each structural element. Post 1, titled. Post 2, titled. Support beams, titled. Roof structure, titled. He literally registered this bridge the same way you register a car. And do you know why he did that?" Marcus's eyes hardened. "Because even 78 years ago, there were people who tried to claim other people's property. My grandfather made sure there would never be any legal ambiguity. This bridge is titled property. You can't claim it, you can't tax it, and you sure as hell can't put your signs on it." Patricia's face had gone pale. "The HOA attorney said," Marcus cut her off with a humorless smile. "I called your attorney yesterday, interesting conversation. She told me the HOA never consulted her about any bridge. When I read her your letters, she was very concerned. Apparently you've been citing legal authority that doesn't exist. She said if you'd actually asked her, she would have told you this was a losing battle from day one." He let that sink in. "So here's where we are, Patricia. You've spent 3 months harassing me about property you have zero claim to. You've threatened liens, you've trespassed. And today you vandalized my bridge. I have documentation of everything. I have witnesses to your trespassing, and I have video of this morning's vandalism." Patricia tried to regain her composure. "I was acting in my capacity as HOA president." Marcus shook his head. "You have no capacity here. This property predates your HOA. Your bylaws don't apply. Your authority ends at my property line, and you crossed that line literally multiple times." He pulled out one final document. "This is a property survey I had done last week. Cost me $800. It confirms everything I've told you. It also confirms something else interesting. That HOA common area across the creek, the one you kept pointing to as justification, it's actually within 10 feet of my property line, which means under county easement law, any structure connecting my property to that area requires my written permission. You don't have it. You never asked for it." The implications crashed over Patricia visibly. Marcus pressed his advantage. "Here's what's going to happen. You have 24 hours to do 3 things. First, remove that sign without causing additional damage. Second, send a written retraction to every homeowner who received your newsletter claiming this bridge was HOA property. Third, resign as HOA president." Patricia's eyes went wide. "You can't." Marcus's voice went cold. "I absolutely can." Because option 2 is that I file criminal vandalism charges, sue the HOA for harassment and trespassing, and send copies of all your threatening letters to every homeowner in this neighborhood, along with the property records proving you were wrong. I'll also send them to the county assessor's office. Because if you've been claiming HOA authority over property you don't control, that raises interesting questions about what else you might have misrepresented. Patricia's mouth opened and closed. Finally, words came out. "This is ridiculous. Over a bridge?" Marcus stepped closer, his voice quiet but intense. "No, Patricia, this is about you spending 3 months telling me I don't own property that my family has held for over a century. This is about you threatening my home with liens based on authority you don't have. This is about you ignoring facts because you couldn't stand being wrong. You made this fight. I'm just finishing it." He held out a pen and a piece of paper. "Written agreement that you'll complete all 3 requirements within 24 hours. Sign it now, or I make the calls to my attorney before you reach your car." Patricia stared at the paper. Her hand shook slightly as she took the pen. "You're destroying me over this," she whispered. Marcus's expression didn't soften. "You tried to steal my bridge, Patricia. You just didn't expect the owner to fight back." She signed. Marcus took the paper, folded it carefully, and stepped aside. Patricia walked past him, her shoulders hunched, the sign's hammer still dangling from her hand. Marcus watched her go, then turned to look at his grandfather's bridge, standing solid and undisputed in the morning light. 22 hours later, Marcus stood on his front porch with his morning coffee, watching a familiar car pull into his driveway. Patricia climbed out, and for the first time since he'd known her, she looked uncertain. She walked to his door without the clipboard, without the confident stride. When he opened it, she held out a folder. "The retraction," she said quietly. "I sent it to all 143 homeowners last night, and I've submitted my resignation to the board. It's effective immediately." Marcus took the folder, scanned the letter inside. It was thorough. Patricia had admitted her error, cited the property records, and apologized for overstepping HOA authority. But something in her expression made Marcus hesitate. "What else?" he asked. Patricia's face crumpled slightly. "Can I show you something?" 20 minutes later, they stood at the bridge. Patricia pointed to the HOA common area across the creek, a small park-like space with benches and a walking path. 18 months ago," she began, her voice strained, "the county told us that area was eroding into the creek. They said we needed to either fix it or lose public access. The estimated cost was $40,000. The HOA didn't have it. I thought." She stopped, swallowed hard. "I thought if the bridge was HOA property, we could claim riparian responsibility and get county assistance for the erosion control. I convinced myself that because the bridge connected to that area, it had to be shared property. I knew I was stretching the rules. I didn't know I was completely wrong." Marcus studied her. "You could have just asked me." Patricia nodded miserably. "I know, but asking would have meant admitting the HOA had a problem we couldn't solve, and I've spent 6 years making sure everyone thinks I have all the answers." She gestured helplessly at the creek. "Now the erosion's worse. The county's threatening to condemn the area, and I've lost my position over a bridge that was never mine to claim." Marcus looked at the eroding bank across the water. His engineer's eye assessed the problem automatically. It was fixable, not cheaply, but fixable. "How many people use that park?" he asked. Patricia blinked at the question. "Most of the neighborhood. It's the only green space we have. Kids play there, families have picnics." 3 hours later, Marcus was on the phone with his former colleague at the county engineering department. 2 days after that, he was presenting a solution to the HOA board, minus Patricia. The erosion could be stabilized using a technique called riparian buffers, combined with strategic stone placement. Cost, $22,000, not $40,000. And because the solution would protect both the HOA land and his own property downstream, Marcus offered to cover a third of the cost. The HOA, humbled by Patricia's public admission, agreed to the rest. Construction started in October. But the story wasn't finished. 1 week after Patricia's resignation, Marcus received a visit from 3 homeowners he'd never met. They lived in the section of the neighborhood farthest from his property. Each had a similar story. Patricia had claimed HOA authority over something on their property, a fence, a shed, a decorative pond, and demanded fees or changes. Each had backed down, assuming Patricia knew the rules. Now, with Marcus's property records as evidence, they wanted to know if they'd been wronged too. Marcus spent an afternoon at the county recorder's office with all three homeowners. Two of the properties were grandfathered like his. The third was technically in HOA jurisdiction, but Patricia's demands had violated the HOA's own bylaws. All three had grounds to fight. The special HOA meeting 2 weeks later was tense. Marcus attended as a witness, not a participant. The three homeowners presented their cases. Patricia's replacement as president, a retired accountant named Robert Chen, looked increasingly horrified as he reviewed the documentation. By the end of the meeting, the board voted to refund all fees Patricia had collected under false pretenses. Total amount, $4,200. They also voted to institute a new policy. Any property dispute would require consultation with the HOA attorney before any action was taken. Robert personally apologized to all four homeowners. "Patricia's methods," he said carefully, "did not reflect this board's values. We hope we can rebuild trust." Marcus saw Patricia one final time 2 months later. She was loading boxes into her car, moving someone had mentioned to a condo across town. He pulled over. She looked up wary. "I wanted to say something," Marcus began. "What you did was wrong, you know that, but I also know why you did it." Patricia's eyes glistened. "Does that make it better?" Marcus shook his head. "No, but understanding matters. You spent 6 years trying to solve every problem in this neighborhood by yourself. That's not sustainable. It's not even possible. Leadership isn't about having all the answers. It's about knowing when to ask for help." Patricia was quiet for a moment, then softly, "Your grandfather's bridge is beautiful. I did notice that, even if I handled everything else wrong." Marcus nodded. "He built it to last, that was the point." Patricia managed a small, sad smile. "Some things do last, and some things shouldn't have been touched in the first place." She closed her car door and drove away. 4 months later, on a cold January morning, Marcus stood on his grandfather's bridge watching fog rise from Willow Creek. The erosion repairs were complete. The park across the water was stable and beautiful. His bridge stood exactly as it had for 78 years, titled and undisputed. Behind him, he heard footsteps, his daughter visiting from college, coffee mugs in hand. She handed him one and leaned against the rail beside him. "Mom told me about the HOA thing," she said. "About that woman who tried to claim the bridge." Marcus sipped his coffee. "People see power as taking. Sometimes real power is knowing exactly what you own and what you don't." His daughter smiled. "Grandpa would have liked how you handled it." Marcus looked down at the solid posts beneath them, each one titled and recorded, each one proof that some people plan for the future by respecting the past. "He taught me something important," Marcus said quietly. "That property isn't just about ownership, it's about stewardship, taking care of what's yours so you can pass it down better than you found it." The creek flowed below them, constant and cold. Marcus had learned that sometimes justice doesn't come from a courtroom. Sometimes it comes from doing your homework, standing your ground, and refusing to let entitled people rewrite history. And as he stood there in peace, he smiled. Because justice, served with century-old property records and titled bridge posts, was the most satisfying kind of all. Meanwhile, in Charleston, South Carolina, retired maritime attorney Alina Voss was tending her roses when her new neighbor demanded she remove the unsightly dock from our shared waterfront. Alina set down her pruning shears and smiled, the same smile that had once preceded depositions where she demolished opposing counsel. "Our waterfront?" she asked gently, pulling out her phone to show him something. "This might interest you. See these coordinates. They're from an 1847 Admiralty survey. I don't just own to the waterline. I own the tidal basin 300 feet offshore. Your boat, it's anchored on my property. Would you like to discuss lease terms?" The neighbor's face went white. "But that's a story for another time."